Welcome back on the day two of the Breathe Pakistan conference. We've had quite of interesting discussions, particularly even on yesterday and today. And the subject of the Hindu Kush Karakoram Himalaya region has been sort of the feature because, as we all know, water and water scarcity, water management, this is the primary issue South Asia faces as it goes towards 2050 or 2047, which will be sort of a centennial for the entire region. And to talk about it, we have with us Sonam Wangchuck, who has traveled here from Ladakh. He runs the Sekmol School, he runs the Himalaya School for Alternatives, and is the winner of the Ramon Magsaysay Prize for his work on working with water and ice, particularly developing the world-renowned ice stupas. So welcome to the conference, welcome to Pakistan, and also welcome to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's start off with that. We talk about this region as the third pole, this particular belt which stretches technically it stretches all the way from Afghanistan to Tibet and Nepal and goes all the way to Bhutan. But the third pole, the really big, I'd say, the altitudes are sort of culminate from Chitral to Ladakh and then to the northern parts of Nepal as well. You have lived your life in this region. You know it gets very tough as well, particularly in the winters when the water is short as well. And then you've worked around alternatives all your life. What are your key learnings, and what would you tell us that we really need to understand the importance of the third pole region itself?
Thank you very much for having me here. Yes, I have keenly observed our context of the high Himalayas surrounded by glacial zones and streams that flow from the glaciers and then feed into Indus. So, whole of our civilization, Ladakh, is on tributaries to Indus, streams that go into Indus. But now, as is quite well known now, these glaciers are melting away very fast, very fast. In fact, I remember, in my lifetime, glaciers that were so low that we used to cross with metal bridges. Cars would drive over bridges, not with a river, with a glacier below. Mm-hmm. Today, the glacier is nowhere, the bridge is nowhere, it has receded a kilometer higher. So it's going away very fast. Now, it's not going away silently. It's going away with definitely droughts, shortage of water, and every few years a big flash flood to punctuate. Because when in the heat of summer, these glacial ice melts fast, and then it could be accompanied by a cloudburst or a rain. With climate change or warming, the clouds that didn't used to cross the Himalayas are now able to cross, because in warm temperatures clouds go higher, so they can now cross those and cause cloudbursts. Big floods, not floods but flash floods that devastate our villages have been happening. And yes, we have been doing what we can at the local level to mitigate, to adapt, but mitigate by learning to live as low carbon as possible, using the sun's energy. So I've been working on designs and construction of mud built buildings that are solar heated, which do not need even a drop of oil or a twig of wood to burn, and yet it can be as warm as anywhere in the world, plus 20 when it is minus 20. Or artificial glaciers, we can talk about that in detail, but it's not there, the solution for these crises.
The scale of adaptation is so much that you need to do a lot more.
Yes.
And I think when we talk about South Asia, the key issue that I've felt is that the big population centers, such as in Pakistan you have Punjab, in India you have the UP and then MP, and then you have these big provinces which receive the lion's share of the water. But the people here are not as closely attached to the rivers. So the importance of the river is not there, while in the northern areas where there's a relationship with the river. So how do we really connect the people's own lifestyles to link it with the protection of the rivers, or the whole ecosystem, the whole hydrological cycle? We face the same issue, as you've mentioned. We had the big floods in 2022, and the driver of that was the sea had heated up so much that the clouds from the Arabian Sea moved deep inland into Sindh, which is not the norm. So we're facing the same issues as well. How do we really get the people to understand the importance of rivers?
Yes. Before that, I should say, Pakistan knows the importance of Sindh River, Sher Darya or Indus. And where I come from is the region where it originates.
Yes, yes.
And therefore, we feel very connected to this river. And so should everybody, because our lives depend on it. Now, for the downstream, where again Indus gives life, Indus Valley civilization, one of the earliest cradles of civilization, maybe what I think is today our education system, our upbringing, is more obsessed with material growth, money, and the razzmatazz of so-called Western model of development, and we don't value more basic things like clean air and water and the river that gives life. So the place to start that sensitization, I think, is not in seminars and workshops, because grown-ups are difficult to change. And they hardly find an hour or day to attend something that educates them. But a time when every grown-up was a captive listener, not in a 1-hour workshop, not in a 1-day seminar, 1-week training, but for 10 to 20 years, captively listening, absorbing, is called school. It's called education process. That's where we need to develop that sensitivity to what gives us life, water, clean air, and how our behavior makes a difference for the good or for the bad in the ecosystem. Ecology, ecos is home. So understanding your home should be the first thing that happens in education. If you don't understand your home, which is constituted of the land you live on, you eat from, and the river that gives you water and the air, then you're in a way homeless. Yes. You're like a lost case or cause. Unfortunately, that's what our education system is today making us. We become revenue earners, workers, but we don't become sensitive human beings who live in harmony with nature. So that's where
I think it's very interesting, because I feel that you know all of this and you're able to explicitly explain it as well, because you've gone through this journey yourself. And particularly with your work in Ladakh, given the ice stupas, this is a world famous story at this point.
More than that, talking of education, yes, it could be because I live in that region.
And you felt the home, what it is.
Yes, but not thanks to modern education system, thanks to its absence. I was born in a tiny village which didn't have a school, and it's right on the banks of Indus, 5 households. Thanks to that, I didn't have any schools. And thanks to that, I was left to grow organically in my surroundings. Till 9 years of age, I didn't go to any schools. And seeing schools later, I think that was the best thing to happen to my childhood, where I could connect to the land, to the water, to the river, to the culture and tradition of the people there. So therefore, we need to bring these elements into schools. I was lucky to miss that school that would have, triggered me into some direction differently. So yes, definitely people who live should also learn about that in their curriculum, in their education, which should be very local. Sorry, you were asking about ice.
The ice stupas, yes. How did that come about? And now it's a big success story as well. So, we hear that the model is being replicated across South Asia wherever the mountain communities exist. So how did that come about, and what would be your key takeaway from this journey that now it's such a big thing?
I would first start by saying that idea of man-made glaciers is not new.
Yes.
It's been hundreds of years old.
Mm-hmm.
In the whole region, into Skardu-Baltistan here, people used to practice some form of making or what they call seeding or grafting
Yes.
glaciers.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear that in Baltistan they still do.
Yes.
We don't know the science of it so much, but there is a practice that has continued, means there is something that makes them do it, and therefore some benefits. That's the mythological part and historical part. But in recent decades in Ladakh, other people, senior Ladakhi engineers, have been trying to freeze winter water and keep it till summer. And I came across their efforts and saw their problems and wanted to use science and technology to make it easier to do it, less pain and more useful. So then ended up developing what is called now ice stupas, conical or pyramid-shaped ice giant cones, which could store, tens of millions of liters of water. And now, because of the geometry, it doesn't melt in the sun,
Yes, yeah.
so it melts in summer when people need water the most. We are trying to spread it in Ladakhi villages. So far it has involved a lot of human effort in the middle of cold, so people weren't quite keen on, working if there are problems in the midnight in January, -20. So now we are bringing automation, digital automation, so that it can happen without human interventions, unmanned formation of these ice cones. That's spreading, and yes, it is. I would be happy to tell you that some people in Baltistan also on their own started doing it, and I hope to see them. Similarly in Nepal, in Alps, in Switzerland, and several other countries. In South America, Chile, they do it for reasons of water and for reasons of even tourism, because it's interesting and it attracts people. But I would look at it as not something big or something to be proud of. It is more of a symbol of what's happening to the high Himalayas. It's not a luxury or an achievement. It's more a compulsion which we are driven to in the face of climate change and melting glaciers. We are forced to make our own glaciers. So it's like a symbolic call, SOS call to the world, that they should mend their ways, so that we don't have to run pillar to post making our own glaciers. Let the natural glaciers survive. And that's why I always give this message to the world. Please live simply in your big cities, so that we in the mountains may simply live. Because the cause of the melting glaciers is not in Ladakh and the mountains. It is more in New Delhi, Mumbai, Karachi, Islamabad, Beijing, New York, London. So it's important that people there change their lives.
Absolutely. I wanted to end by asking you what to do, but you've already summarized it quite well. And I think the way you accurately point out how it's been a compulsion, you've basically been driven to adapt because no one was taking the right sort of steps at the governance levels or in the big cities, or the drivers of economy were also responsible for that compulsion. So I think that's the key learning here, that for ecosystems that are not always in our view, especially with the policy making circles, but they're impacted very deeply by our decisions, they need to be involved in the decision making and policy making as stakeholders. And also, given how we know that the conception of actual ideas about climate resilience and adaptation comes from the community itself, they need to be deeply involved in these discussions. So thank you for joining us.
I want to say that we need to proactively act, both locally and globally. Locally, we need to educate and re-educate our people, our youth living in these mountains, Hindu Kush Himalayas, to adapt in new innovative
Innovative
ways
ways.
that are not in their traditions,
Mm.
develop new traditions, and to take measures.
Mm-hmm.
Globally, they should support such initiatives.
Yep.
It's none of their doing that they have done to merit this kind of destiny.
I know.
So, polluters or
Mm.
emitters should pay
Mm.
to compensate for what they are going through, at least in training them, educating them, and supporting, funding such interventions like ice stupas or artificial glaciers or all kinds of other ways of holding water at the height it is.
Mm-hmm.
Water must be held at height so that you can then conveniently use it. And these techniques should not only be developed and trained, but also supported. In Ladakh, we have actually started a whole university on this theme, dealing with climate change basically, called Himalayan Institute of Alternatives Ladakh. And I look forward to a time when we have Himalayan Institute of Alternatives Pakistan or Northern Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, Bhutan, so on, so that these institutes re-educate people on new ways of dealing with the effects of climate change.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a pleasure, pleasure having you here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Islamabad as well, and rest of the conference. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, and thank you, Dawn Media, for taking up this challenge as a champion of environment. Very few media houses do it, and I'm really a great admirer of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned for more.